Hey guys, I'm T and welcome to the channel. If you're new here, we make trendy and fun crochet tutorials twice a week, and if you haven't already, smash that like button, drop a comment down below, and subscribe to join in on the fun. In today's tutorial, we're continuing our cinch love affair, this time in the form of flirty side cinch shorts that can be worn high-waisted or low-rise, whatever you choose. Speaking of, by now y'all already know the drill, but just in case you're new, modern crochet tutorials and patterns for you are here with even more dropping twice weekly, so tell a friend and consider clicking the bell to subscribe and you'll never miss an upload. Also, do me a huge favor and give this video a big thumbs up if you like it or 2 thumbs down if you don't. Either way, it's a great way to show support so I can keep putting out free tutorials every Wednesday and Sunday. Now, it's time to get on the show, so without further ado. For this project, any category 4 yarn will work, but I used a total of 185 grams of yarn. That's 415 yards if you're stateside. As for tools, a 5 and 5.5 millimeter hook, scissors, stitch markers, and a tape measure. There is a written pattern down below. Use offer code TCDDIY for a discount off any $9.99 plus order, and enter this week's padding wave by telling us what piece of clothing you'd wear all the time if it were socially acceptable. Mine would be my bathrobe. Cozy, big pockets, and a hood. What else do you need? Details for the giveaway down below. We're using 2 stitches for this project, and they'll be as follows. Chain, slip stitch, and single crochet. This tutorial is made for a size small. You can adjust it for your size, and I explain how to in the video, so let's get started. Getting these shorts started, we're all going to grab our category 4 yarn and make a slip knot. Then we're all going to grab our 5 millimeter hook and start off by making a chain the height that we like for the waistband to be. I'd like for mine to be just about 2 inches or 5 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain 12. Now that we have our chain, we're all going to get started on our first row. So we're all going to start by blocking off that last chain and do a chain 1. Now that chain 1 doesn't count as a stitch, that's our turning chain. Then into that chain that we blocked off are the second chain from our hook. We're all going to bring our hook down, into that chain, yarn over, and gently pull through both loops on our hook. Now, we want to make sure that we're not tugging through too tightly, otherwise the following row will be too tight to work into, so let's do that again. Into that next chain, we're going to insert, yarn over, and gently pull through both loops. Now continue with 1 slip stitch into every chain. We're now at the end of our row 1. Now from here, it's going to be more slip stitch rows, but now all within the back loops. So just to get started on our row 2, we're going to chain 1, flip our work. Now finding that last stitch from our previous row, insert into that back loop or the loop that's furthest away from us, yarn over, gently pull through everything. Again, into that next stitch's back loop, yarn over, gently pull through everything, and that is it. From here, continue with 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. At the end of the row, chain 1, flip our work, and repeat. Now we're just going to continue to repeat that back loop slip stitch row with no increases, no decreases, until we have a portion that can stretch around the widest part of our hips. Now the amount of rows that we have needs to end in multiples of 3 that ends on an even number. Now once we have that number, we're all going to add an additional 4 rows. Those additional 4 rows are going to be the same for everyone, no matter what size we're making, just so we end on the same row repeat. So as an example, since I already have mine done, I went ahead and did a total of 138 rows. Now that was able to stretch around my waist. That was roughly 18.5 inches or 47 centimeters, plus the additional 4 rows that we're all going to do. So now I have a total of 142 rows. Now once we have this waistband completed, we can seam everything together. So let's all start by folding our work in half. Then we're going to insert our hook in through the corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. Once when our hook is in through both corner stitches, we're going to yarn over, pull through, and do a chain up of 1 just to secure. And now we're going to do an outside loop slip stitch seam. So finding that first stitch into the front panel, we're going to insert only in through that front loop. Finding that first stitch into the back panel, we're going to insert only into that back loop. When we have those 3 loops on our hook, we're all going to yarn over and pull through all 3. Again, next stitch into the front panel, insert in through that front loop. Next stitch into the back panel, insert into that back loop, yarn over, and pull through everything. And that's it. From here, we're going to continue on with our outside loop slip stitch seam. When we don't have any more stitches left, I'll meet everyone back. So we are back. We have just completed our seam. Now from here, we're going to do our single crochet row along the edge to prep for the length of the shorts. So what we're going to do is simply chain 1 Then we're going to put 1 single crochet into every side row. So finding that first side row for everyone, it should be this divot. I'm going to find that top loop. I'm going to insert with a single crochet. Now if your tail end is here, you can go ahead and weave that in as you go as well. Let's do that again. Into my following side row, which is this raised row, I'm going to find that top loop and insert with just 1 single crochet again. Once more, this divot is my following side row. I'm going to insert in through that top loop with 1 single. This raised row is my following side row, so insert into that top loop with 1 single crochet. Now we're just going to continue doing this, making our way all the way around. Just as a really quick tip, this single crochet row is going to be as wide as this portion can stretch, so once when it's completed, try our piece on. If it's a little too tight, we do some stitches with a looser grip, or if it's too loose, we do some stitches with a tighter grip. And last tip, the amount of single crochets that we're going to have should be the same amount of rows that we made for the waistband. So we are back. Our single crochet row is complete, and now from here we're going to insert our stitch markers, then get started on the length of our piece. So first things first, we're going to insert our stitch markers into the 2 stitches that we have on both sides of our tail end. Then all we're going to do is just find our 2 middle stitches from there. So really simply, for those of you that have my numbers, since I had a total of 142 rows, I therefore had 142 stitches. So 142 divided by 2 is 71. So from 1 stitch marker, I inserted my stitch marker into the 71st stitch, and then I did the same thing on the other side, so we should have the same amount of stitches on both sides. Then we're going to switch our hook out to our 5.5mm hook, then insert our hook into one of our stitch marker stitches, then we can get started on the length. So once when our hook is into place, we're all going to start by making an odd number chain the length that we'd like for the shorts to be. So keeping in mind that we are going to place the waistband where we like for it to sit once when it's completed, so either high-waisted or low-rise, that's completely up to you. Mine is going to be roughly in the middle, so I'm going to start by making a chain, again with my 5.5mm hook, that is 7.5 inches or 19 centimeters. That's going to be a chain of 35 for me. Now that we have our chain, we're going to do our first mesh stitch row. So we're going to block off that last chain and do a chain 1. Now that chain 1 doesn't actually count as a stitch, that's our turning chain. Then into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, we're going to insert with a single crochet. So into that chain, insert, starting with just 1 single crochet. That is the first stitch for this row. Then we're going to chain 1, skip a stitch, then into that next, insert with a single crochet. Now so far for this row, we should have 3 stitches. The first is that single crochet, second is that chain space, third is that single crochet. Let's do this again. We're going to continue to chain 1, skip a stitch, into the next, insert with a single crochet, until we reach the end of the row. So we are back and we have made our way up with our first row, which is a mesh stitch row. Now we're going to connect it into the base. Now how we're going to connect the first row only is we're going to connect it into that same stitch that our chain is in, just so that we don't miss out on that row. So just into that stitch marker stitch, I can actually take this out for now because I don't need it anymore. And into that stitch that our stitch marker was in, insert with a slip stitch. Then we're going to work our way up to the following row. Now that slip stitch into the base doesn't actually count as a stitch, that's just to connect. Then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that following stitch into the base. Remember that slip stitch into the base still does not count as a stitch, and flip our work. Now the row sequence for the body is going to be 2 mesh stitch rows, 1 single crochet row. So to get started on our second mesh stitch row, we're going to find the last stitch from our previous row, not working into any of those slip stitches into the base. We're going to insert with a single crochet, chain 1, skip a stitch, which should be our chain space, then single crochet. So we're going to continue to chain 1, skip a stitch, single crochet into the next until we reach the end of the row. Now as a quick tip, when it comes to doing our second row for our mesh stitches, our single crochet will always be worked into the top of our single crochet, and our chain spaces will always be on top of our chain spaces. So we are back and our row 2 is completed. Now every third row is going to be a solid single crochet row. So since we're along the outer edge, we're all going to chain 1, flip our work, and just put 1 single crochet into every stitch, and I'll meet you back at the end of our row 3. We are back and we're at the end of our row 3. Now we're going to connect it into the base. Now that will be done exactly the same way as our previous row. So just as a refresher, we're going to find that next available stitch into the base, and that's that stitch for me. We're going to insert with a slip stitch. Now remember, the slip stitches into the base do not count as a stitch. Then to work our way up to the following row, we're going to slip stitch into that following stitch into the base. Still does not count as a stitch, and flip our work. Now this is technically a 3-row repeat, so 2 mesh stitch rows and 1 single crochet row. But since it is an odd number of row repeats, sometimes our single crochet row is going to start along the bottom like how this one did, or sometimes it's going to start along the top like how the following one is. I'm just going to do the following 3 rows with you just so we get all the variants down, then I'll let you do the rest on your own. So we're going to flip our work and get started on our following mesh stitch row. So just like our previous mesh stitch row, finding that last stitch from our previous row, not worked into any of the slip stitches into the base, insert with a single crochet, chain space, skip a stitch, single crochet into the next to reach the end of the row. Our row 4 is complete. Now our row 5 is going to be our second mesh stitch row. So since we're along the outer edge, chain 1, flip our work. We're going to do our mesh stitch all the way down, then I'll meet you back at the end of the row. So we are back. We have just completed our row 5. Now we're going to connect it into the base, same way that we've been doing. So simply into that next available stitch into the base, insert with a slip stitch. Remember, it doesn't count as a stitch. Then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that following stitch into the base. None of those slip stitches count as a stitch. Then we're going to flip our work, and since this following row is going to be our 6th row, we're going to do our single crochet row. So just finding the last stitch from our previous row, not worked into any of those slip stitches, we're going to put 1 single crochet into every stitch and chain space to reach the end of the row. So we are back. We have just completed the first 6 rows for our shorts portion. Now from here, all we're going to do is continue to repeat these 6 previous rows with no increases, no decreases until we're worked into our following stitch marker stitch. And once we have that completed, I'll meet everyone back so we can get started on the other side. So we are back. We have just made our way all the way across from stitch marker to stitch marker with our 2 mesh stitch, 1 single crochet row repeat. Now once we are worked into that following stitch marker stitch, we're going to repeat everything we did here on the other side. So as you guys can see, I already have my second pant leg completed. All we're going to do right after we worked into that last stitch marker stitch is do a chain up 1 and cut. Then simply insert your hook into that following stitch marker stitch, which should be the next stitch, and then just repeat everything until we reach our following stitch marker stitch. Then we should have 2 panels like this. Then once we have both of these pant legs, we can now get started on the inner thigh connector that kind of completes the individual pant legs. But right before we do that, we're all going to insert our stitch marker into the middle side row that we have into each pant leg. So for those of you that have my numbers, I had a total of 71 rows for one pant leg, 71 for the next, because remember it should be the same amount of rows on both sides. So my one middle row is my 36 side row. So I went ahead and inserted my stitch marker into there and through both of the panels. Now once we have those into place, we're going to get started on the inner thigh connector. So try your piece on, making sure that the waistband is going to sit where you want it to sit once the whole thing is completed. Then we're going to insert our stitch marker into any odd numbered stitch from the bottom, right where we'd like for the inner thigh connector to be. So the highest point of your inner thigh. Now I've inserted my stitch markers into the 9th stitch from the bottom. That's just about 2 inches or 5 centimeters. Now from here, we're going to insert our stitch marker into our stitch marker stitch and do a single crochet row. Then from here, we're going to insert our hook into our stitch marker stitch. Then just to get this first row started, we're going to insert our yarn onto our hook and put 1 single crochet into every stitch, working our way down towards the bottom. So once when our hook is in through that stitch marker stitch, we did a chain up a 1. That chain up a 1 doesn't actually count as a stitch. Into that same stitch that our chain 1 and our stitch markers in, insert with our first single crochet, then continue with 1 single crochet into every stitch, working down towards the bottom. So we have just completed our first row for our inner thigh connector. Now we're going to do 2 mesh stitch rows. So chain 1, flip our work, mesh stitch all the way down, then chain 1, flip our work, mesh stitch all the way back. Then I'll meet you back when we have our first 3 rows for our inner thigh connector completed. So we are back. Our first 3 rows for our inner thigh connector are completed. From here, we're just going to continue to repeat our 3 previous rows until we have an inner thigh connector that can reach in between our thighs over to our other panel. Now I'll meet everyone back right after a single crochet row that ends along the bottom, and then I'll meet everyone back so we can see it all together. So we are back. We have just completed our inner thigh connector. I have a total of 13 rows, and just this width is just about 3.5 inches or 9 centimeters. Now we should have all ended after a single crochet row that ends along the bottom. So now we're going to seam it to the other panel that we have. So we're all going to start by making sure that our work is flipped wrong side out. Then we're going to insert our hook into the bottom corner stitch of our inner thigh connector and our other panel. We're going to yarn over and pull through and just do a single crochet seam. So finding that first stitch into the front panel, we're going to insert, next stitch into the back panel, insert, and single crochet everything together. Then next stitch into the front, next stitch into the back, and single crochet, and that's it. From here, we're going to continue to do this till we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, do a chain up, a 1 and cut, then repeat on the other side. So we are back. We have just completed both of our inner thigh connectors. Now we're going to seam up the middle, so let's all start by flipping our work wrong side out. So now that our work is flipped wrong side out, we're all going to insert our hook into the 2 stitches that both of our pant legs are coming out of. Then from here, we're going to do the same single crochet seam all the way down, connecting our 2 panels together until we reach our inner thigh connector. So we're all going to chain 1 just to secure everything in, then finding that first stitch into the front panel, insert, first stitch into the back panel, insert, and single crochet, and continue on with this until we reach our inner thigh connector. So we are back. We have just made our way down with our single crochet seam, and now we're ready to seam our 2 middle connectors together. Now it is going to be the same single crochet seam, but now all we're going to do is put 1 single crochet into every side row. So we do want to make sure that when we're working into this, it's still being flipped wrong side out because we want this seam to be along the inside once when it's completed and worn. So I just flipped this pant leg up. I'm going to grab my 2 middle connectors and just purse them together. Then from here, just find that first available side row. This is mine right here within the front panel. Insert. First side row within the back panel. This is mine right here. Find that top loop and single crochet. Again. Next side row within the front panel, insert, next side row within the back panel, insert, and single crochet. And that's it. We're going to continue doing this till we don't have any more stitches left. Then we're going to work our way up until we reach our waistband, just like how we did this single crochet seam right here. Once we made our way all the way up to our waistband, we're going to slip stitch into the waistband, then do a chain up, 1 and cut. Then I'll meet everyone back. So we are back. Everything is all seamed up. Now the last things we're going to have to do is our waistband drawstring and the cinch drawstring on the sides. So we're going to do the waistband one first because the side ones are optional. So what we're going to do is grab our 5.5mm hook, then just make a chain the length that we'd like for the drawstring to be. Now I'd like for mine to be just about 34 inches or 83 centimeters just because I like to have a longer bow. So I went ahead and made a chain of 200. Now once we have our chain, we're going to just weave it into the waistband. So weaving it into the waistband, you can use your tapestry needle, your fingers if you really want to, or your hook, but all I'm going to do is just find the middle of my shorts. So the easiest way is just to follow the seam all the way up into the waistband. Then I'm going to find the middle of my waistband, so it's roughly about here. This is where I'd like for my drawstring to be. So what I'm going to do is just bring my hook a few rows back and just into that middle stitch. I'm going to kind of pierce that all the way through until I reach the middle. Then I'm going to insert my drawstring chain onto my hook and just pull through. But we want to make sure that we're not pulling all the way through because we do need to leave some slack for the bow. And once we have that, we're just going to continue to do that, making our way all the way back around. Then I'll meet you back. So we are back. We have just completed weaving on our drawstring. Now from here, we're going to weave in our side cinch, but you guys can leave your shorts like this if you're not interested in the side cinch. But all we're going to do, similar idea to our drawstring, we're just going to weave our chain up and then back down. So let's take a look at the other side. So our middle row within the side of our piece, my stitch marker's into there. All we're going to do is just find the row to the right and to the left of that middle row and just weave our chain in all the way up until we reach our waistband, then back down the other side. Once we have that, repeat the same thing on the other side. We are back and we have just completed weaving in our side cinch, and just to show you guys, this is what it looks like. And if you guys would like to cinch it, all you're going to do is grab the tail ends and then you're going to pinch the body portion and then just pull in opposite directions. Then you have your cinch, then go ahead and just tie your sides together. And now that we have that all finished up, we are completed with our shorts. The last thing we're going to have to do is simply weave in all of our ends. And there you have it, y'all. Hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Join us on Instagram, Pinterest, or Twitter. Those links are down below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Catch you on the next one. Bye.